Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and welcome to the Spanish Grand Prix race recap episode here. Round number 4 of the Formula One season is in the books, and it is yet again another masterful performance from Lewis Hamilton from start to finish this entire weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll break down the race itself. It is the Spanish Grand Prix, like we prefaced in our preview episode last weekend, at the end of last week, and it was better than what I was expecting. So let's dive into the race itself here and qualifying really quickly as well, because we had another milestone in Lewis Hamilton's career take place on Saturday afternoon in Barcelona as he collects his 100th career pole position in Formula One. Of course, the first one to ever do that. And by quite some margin is Lewis Hamilton. He's just otherworldly behind the wheel of a Formula One car. And he was just incredible this entire weekend. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Lewis Hamilton for that performance, for clocking in ahead of Max Verstappen on Saturday, and then Valtteri Bottas there in third, which kind of set up the race itself as we expected, the Hamilton versus Verstappen kind of duel that we've seen so far in the first 3 rounds. It did carry over once again here to the 4th round of the season. So the race itself, we weren't expecting too much. Like I said, it's a difficult track to overtake on, and the front runners, this is usually a Mercedes dominated track. So when you saw Hamilton on pole, you're like, okay, he's probably just going to run away with this thing. And, it's just going to be another dud Grand Prix. But at the end of the day, we got a little bit of a show, got some strategy involved. It was actually above average what we were expecting for sure at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. So let's look at the start of this Grand Prix itself, shall we? As lights out and away we go. Lewis Hamilton gets a decent start. Verstappen as well gets a decent start, fairly even down the longest straight in Formula One off the start, that is. And when going into turn 1, Verstappen outbreaks Hamilton and gets ahead into the first corner and pulls away by a little bit there in the first couple of laps there. And that really set up the race itself, the storyline that we really, really needed. The Red Bull out front. Can the Mercedes do anything about it? Because the Red Bull had decent speed this weekend. This is just a Mercedes-esque track. It fits their car a little bit better than the Red Bull. I'm expecting big things next time out of the Red Bull at Monaco in 2 weeks' time, of course, a track that they've done well. No matter how good or how poor their car has kind of been in the past, it's usually a track where that downforce heavy car really shines. So back to the race itself. Of course, Verstappen gets away and kind of gets out of the DRS range, which is so crucial here with the long pit straight. So props to Verstappen to even build up that gap so early on in the going. Valtteri Bottas fell behind Charles Leclair as well at the start. So that really messed with Mercedes' strategy in terms of putting pressure with 2 cars on Verstappen, because Perez didn't quite get the shift that we were expecting, at least I was expecting in qualifying. It was just a little bit disappointing there for him. I believe he started in P8. Yeah, so not what we needed from Sergio Perez in terms of giving us that front 4 battle and messing with the strategy, which would have been really crucial in a race like this, as we saw as the race really got going. But we had a safety car fairly early on for, unfortunately, Yuki Tsunoda, as he would lose engine power there in that newly refurbished corner there at the start of at the start of sector 3. And he would be done for the day. He would be the only retirement from the Spanish Grand Prix as well. So not what Yuki Tsunoda needed by any means. He really just needs to get some laps under his belt at this point and just gain a little bit of confidence. We saw that in Bahrain after having the preseason test. He looked really solid there, having laps under his belt, pulled off a really good performance there in the race. Had a little bit disappointing of a qualifying, but recovered in the race nonetheless. But then since then, he's had mistakes almost every weekend and hasn't been able to find that form that we saw in the season opening weekend there in Bahrain. But he is a rookie at the same time. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some growing pains, and we can't slack him too much. But for this instance, he did nothing wrong, and it was just the car faltering for him, and didn't get the laps that he really, really needed here from Spain. So unfortunate for Tsunoda. That would bring up the safety car due to where his car was parked on the exit of the corner in an unsafe location. So Verstappen had to nail the restart there, and he did. He did a pretty good job, but then Hamilton was able to stay in that DRS range for the large majority of that first stint there prior to the first set of pit stops. And then we get to the first set of pit stops. Verstappen pits before Hamilton. Hamilton goes a couple of laps longer than Verstappen, and we had seen to that point in time, and it was expected at that point in time, that it would just be a one-stop race. The tires seemed like they were holding up not to the greatest degree. It was actually a lot heavier wear than maybe they were expecting coming into this race weekend, but into the race itself, that is. But they were kind of determined to make this one-stop strategy work. But Mercedes went a little bit longer, saw what they could do, but, Verstappen, with that undercut, was able to extend that lead a little bit, but then Hamilton on the fresher tires, when he would eventually pit a couple of laps later, regain that, and then just kind of, stalked Verstappen, if you will, for multiple laps there. And by that point in time, Bottas had gotten by Leclair, and so he was into third, but he was well back behind the duo up front that is definitely going to be in championship contention. Bottas is almost out of championship contention, and we're only at round 4 of 23 because these two guys are just on a different level of consistency and form right now. That is Hamilton and Verstappen. So I don't know what to say about Valtteri Bottas. There's been a little bit of scrutiny from him over the paddock the past weekend because of how that pole that he got in Portimao did not convert into a race victory, finishing third in that one. Just not where that second Mercedes car needs to be and the potential that it has, because it could definitely challenge Lewis Hamilton on a week-to-week basis. I think if it had a different driver in there, but it was just another below average Valtteri Bottas performance in this one. But saying that, he gets another podium, and it's another podium for the trio of them. Spoiler, no surprise there that it was that trio for the 16th time in F1 record. They are atop of the podium places. But to the race itself, didn't have too much happen there for a large majority of it. We had a couple of different strategies there on who wanted to go long, who wanted to go a little bit shorter. But at the end of the day, it ultimately turned into Mercedes masterclass of a strategy here that won them this Grand Prix, as they caught Red Bull napping. They caught them off guard. Hamilton was kind of just stuck behind Verstappen there after that first cycle of pit stops, and it was about that way for, I would say, 15, 20 laps or so. And then, bam, Hamilton comes into the pits. Red Bull caught napping, like I said, and Hamilton puts on the soft compound tires to get him to the end of the Grand Prix, and was able to get past Bottas eventually here, as Bottas kind of stayed out a little bit longer before eventually pitting for the two-stop. But Hamilton eventually got past him and then set his sights on Verstappen in the closing laps of this one. He had to gain 22 seconds at about 20 laps, so he definitely had the gap to gain, but it was very reminiscent of 2019 in Hungary, where it was the exact same strategy. Verstappen kind of left out there on the old tires. Hamilton coming hard on the fresher set on the two-stop strategy, and it paid dividends once again, as it did in Hungary in 2019. Hamilton gets past Verstappen with about 7 laps to go, I believe, on lap 60 of 66. And, of course, that was his race from then on, as Verstappen would come into the pits, put on a fresh set of soft tires, get the fastest lap of this race, and end up finishing P2 behind Hamilton. And there's a lot of questions that I have in terms of Red Bull's strategy there. I think there was a play. I could be wrong, but I think there was an opportunity for them to, even if they came up behind Hamilton, I think they maybe could have done a little bit something with it. If not, go a little bit longer. Sure, Hamilton's going to have the gain on you, but then get in that soft compound tire window where he can charge at the end and really push, because we saw at the end of the Grand Prix, Verstappen was about 3 seconds a lap faster at some point. No, not 3 seconds a lap faster, but he was charging in at a rapid rate of knots. And I think it would have been really interesting to see if Red Bull decided to pull the plug a little bit quicker there, because you knew Hamilton was going to get there eventually. It was just a matter of if, not when, or when, not if, excuse me. So yeah, it was just a little bit confusing from my perspective, at least, why Red Bull didn't play a little bit more of an aggressive strategy there. They had nothing really to lose. They weren't in jeopardy of losing second place to Bottas at any point in time. So I don't know, just kind of bewildering for Red Bull there. But, once again, Mercedes just shows why they have won so many Constructors' Championships in a row and why they are the class of Formula One right now. So, yeah, what more can you say about Lewis Hamilton? His 98th career victory in the sport, closing in on 100 career victories. So his 59th converter from pole position as well. So, I mean, this guy is just, we are really seeing how good he is this season, because the Mercedes is meant to be slower than the Red Bull at points in time this season. And of course, this is a Mercedes track that suits their car style and they're set up a little bit more than the Red Bull. But saying that, Mercedes is just killing it right now. 3 out of the 4 races so far, Hamilton's winning. And I know it's a very close championship battle right now. It's nip and tuck. I think it's 14 points between the two of them, Verstappen and Hamilton. So it can go either way. One bad race for one of them, and then one can extend the gap or close it. It's just going to be fun to watch, no doubt, for the remainder of the season. But I think, Mercedes just has that little bit of an edge right now, both strategic and maybe in the car pace itself over Red Bull. So we'll see if that changes next time out in Monaco. But from behind those 3 at the podium places, Charles Leclerc earns the best of the rest here. And just overall, a great performance from him the entire weekend. Got a great qualifying effort there. Finishes where he qualified, and that's exactly what you hope for if you're Ferrari finishing 4th here. And then, of course, Carlos Sainz in 7th. So a really solid day for Ferrari overall. And you got to feel really great if you're a Tifosi fan after this one, because, in this race last year, they did show some speed. Leclerc had some unfortunate, malfunctions go his way, and he was forced to retire. Vettel got some points on a very rare occasion for him last season for Ferrari. So that pace definitely translated over this time around. And then behind Leclerc, we got Sergio Perez going from 8th up to 5th place. So a solid recovery drive. Of course, he would have wanted to finish P4 for sure, but ends up finishing about 9 seconds behind Leclerc at the end of this one. So that second Red Bull seat is still a bit of a mystery, and we don't know what to expect because Perez really hasn't had a clean weekend, because he said he was struggling from a little bit of pains during qualifying, and then he spun in qualifying, so he only had one good opportunity to get a solid lap in, and it wasn't a great lap by any means. So yeah, it's just aggravating, because you think of what Red Bull could do up there with the Mercedes if they had that second car up there, but I still rate Perez highly. It just hasn't quite gone to plan so far for the first 4 rounds of this season. Let's see if it can happen in the 5th round at Monaco. Like I said, there's a lot. That's a case for a lot of these guys here come Monaco. But going back to 6th, Daniel Ricciardo, his best performance by far in the McLaren so far in this very young season. Out qualifies Lando Norris, as well as places him in the finishing order, finishing 6th. So you got to feel great for Daniel Ricciardo here, slowly starting to get into the groove here with his new team, and that confidence is only going to build and build and build over the course of this season. So looking forward to seeing what Ricardo can do at Monaco, where a track he's done very, very well. Of course, a race victor there in the streets of Monaco for Daniel Ricciardo. We talked about Carlos Sainz in 7th there. Solid drive. I had him as my turbo driver for F1 Fantasy. A bit of a mediocre weekend for myself. Kyle and I matched on points actually this weekend, so very evenly matched, to say the least, in our fantasy league. So, but yeah, for Sainz, yeah, I was hoping for a little bit more. I thought he could maybe out-qualify Leclerc in this one, but Leclerc just showed up in qualifying and really did a masterful job to outpace the home track there for Carlos Sainz. So finishing 7th, solid recovery drive if you want to go back to last week in the Portuguese Grand Prix, where he finished outside the points. It's just kind of where Carlos Sainz really finishes in Formula One, about this 5th to 9th range. That's kind of his bread and butter, and that's kind of the cars he's been kind of put in so far in his F1 career. That's just what their capabilities are. So at least he's getting what the car should be getting out of it, really, right now. So solid from him. Then the first guy 1 lap down goes back to 8th place here in Lando Norris. He beat himself up a little bit, and it was just a little bit disappointing from Lando Norris this weekend. Went to the top of the charts, I believe, in Q1 in qualifying. So it seemed like he had a solid pace in this one. But then in Q3, just didn't have the great lap there. Finish a qualifying P9 that was, and just ended up going up 1 place in the actual race itself. But then again, it is difficult to overtake. So he'll come back stronger, I'm sure of it. Just uncharacteristic performance maybe from Lando Norris after the first solid 3 rounds that he's had in 2021. Then Esteban Ocon in 9th, and his fellow Frenchman there, Pierre Gasly. Really solid drive from him specifically in the late going of that one. He was back in 14th with about 6 laps to go, ended up getting up to 10th by having some fresher tires there and getting past some slower cars. So just to get a point out of it for Pierre Gasly's second consecutive week where that is the case for the AlphaTauri driver, you got to take what you can get, and a point is still pretty impressive for Pierre Gasly after the struggles that he faced throughout the weekend here, really not being quite up to the pace that the AlphaTauri is maybe expected to be a little bit later on when a track more suits their style. And for Esteban Ocon, I kind of glanced over him, but fell back a little bit in the race pace. Alpine just didn't have it on Sunday, but still get some points for the French team. Does the French driver. Then the I guess the best of the rest, if you will, beyond the point standings is or the points finishers. Lance Stroll gets 11th place there. Nobody really shocked me from here on out in terms of the actual finishing order. Disappointing for Fernando Alonso in his home Grand Prix. Was in points positions there late in the going. Was suffering from a little bit of mechanical problems, I believe, if I heard over the radio correctly on this one. So he had a train behind him. That one that Pierre Gasly was in that he ended up getting to the front of at the end of this one. But Fernando Alonso pitted late in this one to put on some tires. They were just absolutely shot. They were absolutely shot, excuse me, at the end of this race. So ends up finishing P17 for his home race. Not what we want for Fernando Alonso, and of course not what he wants personally for his home race. So yeah, overall, a solid Grand Prix from what we were expecting. Not a great Grand Prix overall from what we have seen in the past in Formula One terms, that is, specifically so far this season. I definitely think it's the lowest of the four, but, Portugal and Spain, a little bit of that's compared to what we saw in Imola and in Bahrain, but you're expected to have some of those. You can't be a great Grand Prix every single time out, but still solid. We'll look forward to Monaco, a difficult track, of course, to pass if you can pass at all on that one. But I do enjoy the spectacle of Monaco, and we'll have that to break down in a couple of weeks' time here at the Green Flag. But once again, congratulations to Lewis Hamilton on yet another Grand Prix victory. Going for 99 at Monaco. We'll see if he can get that done there. And for Verstappen, kind of needs to execute there at Monaco, a track that he's had hit or miss success at, struggled at sometimes keeping the car off the barriers. He's going to need to do that down there in Monaco. So with the Armcos on either side of you, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be tough, and we'll see if the dynamic duo of Hamilton and Verstappen can finish 1-2 once again for the 5th consecutive time to start this season. Both of those guys as well, just to preface this, they're off to the best starts of their careers in Formula One so far for them, both respectively, which is crazy to think that Hamilton is off to the best start of his career so late on in his career. But that just goes to show you how much on top of his game that he is. And he's been a traditionally slow starter. When we get to the European tracks in the middle of the season, or about the 1/3 mark, 2/3 mark, that's Hamilton's bread and butter. And that's where he really, really gets going. But he's already getting it going, and he's been gone basically for the first 4 races. So he's having to step up his game, I think, a lot this season. And this is definitely the championship battle we've been really hoping for many, many seasons, and it's great that we're getting to see that. And hopefully Verstappen can kind of win up next time out and close that gap just a little bit more and make it even more exciting. But the Spanish Grand Prix is in the books, and that has been your race recap episode here at the Green Flag. Speaking of at the Green Flag, make sure to follow us at the Green Flag Pod on Instagram, as well as Twitter at the Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We would really, really appreciate that. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the YouTube video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker, and Kyle and I will talk to you later this week to get you set up for NASCAR on that side of things. But then we will have you back, of course, for Formula One fans for the Monaco Grand Prix in a couple weeks' time.